Hi, and welcome to the Diablo podcast. I'm your host, Xanth, and we are brought to you by PureDiablo.com, your home for the ever-growing Diablo community, an expansive wiki, and this podcast. Today, I am joined by Neinball.
Oh, hi.
I am joined bright and early by Angst.
Oh yeah, it is 4:30 a.m. Good morning, everybody.
Ooh,
Yeah,
ouch.
Angst wants to be here more than anyone. And first time, but not first time to the Diablo community. Dredscythe. What's your life story? Please tell us, as it is your first Diablo podcast with me.
Uh, okay. Hi, my name is Dredscythe. I have been around. This is now the 12th year in Diablo content creation slash having conversations with blues and CMs and all that matter. Um, I will give the quickest rundown of important history things as possible because Neinball knows like dang, he's done a lot. I really started basically. I came from World of Warcraft, and all my friends had abandoned Diablo 3 before it even came out. So I made a website called Diablo Expressions. Through friendships and people and finding others, creating a guild support program before Discord made free VoIP services a thing. Managed to get a sponsor 300 person ventriloquist server for free and let 300 people use it for free. It was a really good thing. From there spurred on to do a couple more Blizzard focus websites, and then a couple of Diablo specific podcasts, aptly named Scythe and Shield. Kind of get where it's coming from. And that was mainly a more intimate setting because other podcasts at the time were more community focused, Nine with the West March Workshop and Shadow Soulstone as well. And I just wanted to make sure what I was doing was filling a different niche to make sure, as you just said, we as the greater Diablo community were serving the community. That's it. So then I traveled over to another place called Blizz Pro, met a lot of good people. Neinball, one of those people. And then from there, helped out, do a lot of overlays, do a lot of, a lot more meet and greet. Geez, I probably met like hundreds of people, like legitimately. Like I did a reflection video on like all my community stuff, which goes back 20 plus years. And I literally put down as many people as I could remember, hundreds, in like the credit section at the end. And then most recently, I've moved over to be a content creator for a couple of different branches at Maxroll, as well as, still being a Diablo partner, still proving that, my English teachers were correct. All I had to do was find something to write about, and I could write, 70-page thesis papers in 2 months about a game that I've grown to love over the last 10 years, or 4-page documents on here's how to fix this system. So I've tried to make it as short sweet as possible, and there you go.
Well, thanks for coming on. Uh, we've been wanting to get you on for a while, and now the whole gang's here. And why are we here? Well, we're here to get ahead of ourselves by a good margin. So Diablo 4 comes out June 6th, which
Or
isn't
second.
or second, depending. And I'm actually very excited for the second. I did make a mistake. I bought my wife a concert ticket for the 6th, which just means I'm going to be, I'm playing on the second, and I will play on the 6th, but I have obligations. And anyways, that it shows how much I care. But we're going to get ahead of ourselves because we know the game releases on the 6th, but we're going to speculate past that. Um, the future of the game. Sure, are there other things we can speculate about that we don't know? Story, um, what the druid's class mechanic is? Absolutely. Those are all questions we want to know. But for the longevity of the game, we need more, right? The druid's class mechanic isn't going to make or break Diablo 4. It's what's going to come after that release, right? Unless it's really bad. I'm just saying that class mechanic needs to work. Um, but I'm just really hung up on
There-
it. I'm sorry. You know,
Dozens
that
of people are concerned about this issue. Dozens.
dozens of us that just need to know.
I'm sensing a trend here.
But the goal is to just speculate on all the things that are yet to come. So we had some good discussion flowing in our Discord around that. And my goal here is to just take it all in and let you guys kind of roam. I'm going to try and keep you grounded. Neinball's got a bedtime we need to adhere to. And kind of angst too, I suppose, because you're just going to be exhausted. Um,
So I
Depending
do
on how
have
you
to
look at it.
ask: have you not gone to sleep yet, or have you already woken up? Which side
No,
of the
I have
coin are you
already
on?
woken up, which means
Okay.
technically my bedtime is the furthest of any of us.
It's fair. You're gonna have to go to bed early tonight. Um, I do have to bring up one last time before we go into the speculation. I want to thank the folks over at Diablo Next for this sweet robe. Anybody who's just listening, I realize we shrug those people off too often. The assumption is everybody's tuning in on YouTube and actually watching us. But anybody who's listening on Spotify or Apple, you're missing out. You're missing the view of myself and Nineball adorned in these sweet cultist robes. Um, Description: red, gold, awesome. That's the best I'm going to be able to do in this contained medium. But for those of you just listening, we're in robes. It's not weird. I did not wear it for.
and only robes.
That's right. I opted not to wear it to our last podcast as we were interviewing Brian and Deandra because I didn't want to weird them out. I just, meeting new people, don't wear the robe. It sets the wrong
But you
tone.
did want to flex on Dread and myself, considering we don't have any.
I
I
want to.
mean, if we're gonna, if I have to be honest, about 4 feet to my left, I actually do have a set of robes.
Oh,
It's just in the
stop
box.
it.
So just you, Angst. And I want to point out, I would be with you
I
100%,
see where this
Angst.
is going.
I am not a Diablo partner. This was sent courtesy of Diablo Next, and I thank them. And I will continue to thank them because I'm going to just keep wearing it. And this is not a robes-based podcast, as anytime I feel the need to talk about it, it becomes one. So we're going to stop talking about robes. Let's talk about Diablo 4 and speculation for where it's going to go. And I think one of the nice points that was brought up right away was sets, right? Diablo 3, as we're seeing, if we're going to talk general Diablo news, we have a lot of cool PTRs. And those of you guys who are interested in D2 and D3, we're going to be talking about those in a different podcast later. Not later tonight, though, but later-ish. There might be a special guest. We'll talk about that when it happens. But, um, you know, uh, we saw Diablo 3 get dominated by sets, right? Sets make and break your character. And as a conscious decision, they've taken a step back of sets in Diablo 4 and have tiptoed around them. So let's start speculation with sets. Are they coming back? Are we going to see them in their Diablo 3 glory, or will they be a little bit more niche as they are in Diablo 2? I want to hear your thoughts.
So I probably just want to start this by going and setting expectations that even though in Diablo 4 there are at launch no sets, they had briefly talked about sets in Diablo 4 and their ideas for them when it was originally announced back in 2019, and that the sets were going to sit at the kind of like the midpoint of the totem pole. You'd have your starting game, your commons, your blues, your yellows. You would kind of like evolve into sets, and then as you entered into the end game, you would be focusing more on legendaries and at the time ancients and such. That whole part of the sets has then been removed, where it was kind of like your starter. That was going to be you'll get like sets as you level, and this is your starter. This is how you start progressing into the end game. But then in the end game, you'll age out of it. But of course now they're not there at all.
Right. I'm guessing part of the question is where will they ultimately fall? Because what you just described, right? This was their design for years ago, from years ago,
Mm.
and we know a lot of things have changed, and I guess we'll get into a few of those later on. But the question is that still their position? Is that their desired position? I mean, of course, Xanth, as you've already mentioned, in D3 you can't really go without sets, right? And it's pretty obvious that that limits build diversity like massively, of course, because it's a set and then the handful of supporting legendaries. Maybe there's like 2, maybe even 3 variants for a set that you can go for. But usually it's like these handful of builds that are dictated by the sets in D3 that are in any way viable. And of course, for D4, it stands to reason they don't want that. And I don't think anybody really wants that, even from the player base. Just like having sets be this ubiquitous and be mandatory to progress in any way. So yeah, question is where might they end up? Where is their room for them? Because of course the problem is you need some time to find the whole thing. Like you can't be an actual like early days goal because you're just not gonna have the time to get it and before you age out of the second. So that's I think this is part of the predicament we're facing right now. The second base, like the totem pole, as Neinball put it, of progression.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah,
it's.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like, for how many people was the first set piece that you ever found, was Arctic Binding, one of the lowest item level like set pieces that you can go through and get, and then how many other Arctic set pieces did you find? Like none. It's like, yeah, you never completed sets while they were relevant in Diablo 2.
Yeah, it's tough because like a lot of people in Diablo 3 who've played Diablo 3 for like you don't even have to play Diablo 3 for a long time. You don't have to be a 10-year, 5-year veteran. You just have to play one season and
One,
understand
yeah.
what sets place in the hierarchy of itemization for the game is, and it's everything. Classes, identity is built into the sets. The balance of the class is built into the sets. The relative power, and I'll say perceived community um, ranking of a class is all based around what class has the best set for that season, like flavor of the month stuff that we're used to more with like something like World of Warcraft than we are really with a Diablo game. And also, a lot of people don't really, when you're shifting to like the Diablo 4 aspect, how non appropriately address like the original idea, but that idea of itemization has, it's actually good that we've been seeing it happen in the public eye because usually we don't get to see that. But the whole itemization of Diablo 4 has completely gone underneath humongous changes in front of our eyes, like from the demo in 2019 to like what items are now from like the press event, like what I was able to see. Like itemization is completely different. So when you kind of boil down like everyone views the kind of the problem with sets as through the lens and perspective of like D3, like, oh, they're used in this manner to balance classes, everything I stated before. But I think the real issue with sets is that they kind of pose a question, and it's a question more of, will I be better off using this set, even if there are higher rarity items that get introduced at some point, because the set bonus works out. And if that happens, then I'm locking out those slots of other potential items. And then am I really able to create my own build, or am I just kind of going with what the developers have assigned for me? And while yes, there's always that, because the developers make the game, the developers make the items, the developers make the skills. Yes, that's a thing. But I think if you want to live up to the player agency, you want to make sure that any system you do has good pieces. And then you just let the player base do what they want. Like, not to make it sandboxy, but to make it a sandbox and just let the players do what they want to do. Sets kind of have a lot of friction in the sandbox, if you kind of get where I'm going at. So it's not. So at the end of the day, it's like I'm not against sets, but it's really hard to get sets in such a position where they come in, they phase out, and what you're doing at the end of your character's progression, like when you feel you've accomplished the most in the game, doesn't involve sets and doesn't need sets. That's really hard to do, and I do not envy the developers for that, because that's a tough itemization question that they have to answer somehow.
I think that's where it becomes easier with the system that we've seen so far of like, hey, let's just not have them for a bit until we figure out how to do it. Because I think of like Diablo 2, the one set that always stood out to me, coming from hardcore and dying a lot was Sigins. Like I wanted to be able to get that set on, because you could equip it relatively early. It had some decent bonuses, but it was outpaced by so much more later on in the end game. It felt like a good stepping stone. Um,
Mhm.
and like, I don't mind sets as like that stepping stone, but once they become, as you kind of were alluding to before, Dread, where all builds are centered around them, then that's a harder pill to swallow. We're like, now I have to have it, and then that's taking out bits and pieces of choice. Um, so my hope is that if we do see them, it is more like a Sigins, where it is a stepping stone, and maybe there's a cool way to make it really work. Um, towards end game, but it takes more thought than just no, this is just what you wear now because you're level 50 or your Paragon level 70 or whatever it might be. Um,
Yeah. I think Diablo 2 actually did a pretty good job in it, because for the majority of the classes and specs and builds out there, even the, kind of like the quote unquote end game sets, like your Tragols and such, was only, they're really only like starters. They're great. They've got a good loadout of like generic skills and some useful abilities and such. But very rarely were they ever like the 100% go to, you have to complete this set and such. They would always be, but I guess also part of that is also just kind of like more of the flat difficulty nature of in-game Diablo 2, that it wasn't as benevolent. But like if you're going in further into like Ubers and stuff like that, you're probably not wearing a whole bunch of like the class sets. There are better options out there, whether they be rune words or uniques or like a well rolled rare for a certain skill allocation or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But in D2, the issue kind of is like your first character in a ladder season isn't going to be able to complete any set before they
No.
outgrow it,
Yeah.
right? Unless you trade for it, of course, which in D4, well, we don't actually know. It could be that sets are tradable or will be once they are eventually introduced, and maybe that's how you bridge that gap. How you allow people to use a set in the earliest part of the end game, and allow them to complete the whole thing just by having it be tradable. Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, either like tradable or craftable in a sense. Some way where you kind of like, as going in a similar line of thinking of Dread was talking about, is putting it in player agency. Having you give you the option or the tools with which to complete that set. By the time that you get to the certain level or whatever. And we know in Diablo 4, from what we've seen, there's the ancestral and the sacred items and such, and you could have it where sets just will never roll those stats, so they'll never get those affixes as high. And you can always tune it to where it's just not as good as what you could find in the legendary properties, type thing. Where it's like, oh yeah, you equip these 4 pieces and you get equivalent of like 3 properties or such, but maybe it's either generic or it's like super hyper focused. You know.
I mean, just came to my mind, Hadric's Gift in D3. I mean, I know it's controversial because it basically kickstarts your entire itemization and removes that period of where you're actually trying to figure things out. But in D4, and if sets aren't actually endgame viable, like truly endgame viable, then maybe putting it onto the season journey or battle pass or whatever as rewards would be another option, because that guarantees that people can complete a set, and if they then outgrow it, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, over the
But then
years,
again, yeah,
like
that is kind of railroady. Sorry.
I mean, like Hendrix, like it does kind of have like a thing because, like when you look at like the history of D3, like when you look at Hedrick's Gift, you look at Challenge Rifts, you look at Kanai's Cube itself. Kanai's Cube is a lot of gear acceleration when you think about all the recipes and what they can do and how you can like min max that. Um, they're so like people like how many people were around for season 1 when you had to do the campaign before you could even get to adventure mode, and then they realized that yeah, season 2 you could do adventure mode right from the get-go. Like there's been so much speeding up, it's not even crazy. uh and I would actually tend to think like, you know what, to put on the blacksmith, because a growing like principle, and like when I give feedback or I just think of things, is like one of them is effort in equals effort out. Like you want something, put in the effort. However little or much, like there has to be like I'm almost have a feeling like it's not the mentality of I had the hard way, you have it. It's not that. It's like if you want something, you have to kind of do it. So like going around and doing a couple more local events and getting a couple more, reagents there, go, you know, targeting certain local events that give you, maybe a couple more like leather pieces here or a couple more minerals here, and then you can take a chance at crafting a set piece. At the end of the day, it's a Diablo game. RNG has to have some kind of place in it, otherwise it's like what are you playing? I think that would probably be the best way of doing it, because then if people just want to speed run them to 100 and they don't want the sets, they can choose not to interact with that. It's their choice. But if people if that's a smart thing to do, or speedrunners want to do that, or if people like, ooh, this is a cool mechanic I've never experienced. Diablo 4 is my first entry in Diablo franchise. I want to see what this is like. They have the opportunity. Um, I think, and it makes them feel like they're again, it's not just the effort putting in; it's the keeping them engaged with the game. That's another big thing I always tend to look for feedback, like keeping people engaged. Like give people a reason to log in day in and day out, even if it's as simple as crafting something and taking a chance and getting a really good item that makes them like, yeah, I got this good item. Now I have to go farm for the next 2, and I can have this set, and then I'll be godly for 10 levels. And I have to start doing legendary items. But that's all part of a double game. You go through, you misallocate one too many skill points, and then you suffer. You roll a new character, and you do it all over again.
Yeah. Well, I guess it is. It definitely is one of those ones where it's like it's. I think it's. I don't know if it's exasperated or like they give themselves more time with not having it at launch, because then now you're really trying to fill where are you going to put them? It's like we're talking about going through and like speed leveling through and all that other types of stuff. Like if sets come out next year or the first expansion or something like that, however long it is down the line, people are going to have these things all mapped out. People are going to have this is like the progression technique that you have to go through in order to like speed level to max level or end game or whatever as fast as you possibly can. And then where are you going to put the set in? Is it worth, as Dredd had just put, is it worth deviating to get the sets, or do you just keep going if it's like an introductory period? Is it, or maybe it's just something that you pick up along the way. I think, while we're talking about it in like that introductory sense, I don't think it would ever be as bad as Hadric's Gift, because Hadric's Gift is basically, I just completed Act 4, normal mode, and I got my Hadric's Gift, and now I'm in Act 5 Hell. I skipped the whole rest of the game, that level of acceleration and such. But even if it is just something simple that you put in, or even hell, I mean, we're still talking about sets like more like the Diablo 3 sense. There's like Diablo 2. I mean, there was no like real set configurations. Besides, they try to keep some parity on the class ones, but like the angelic set, it's like everyone's walking around with just the amulet and 2 rings. Like for the attack rating, like no one even cares about what the other pieces of the set are. In those cases, but there are other configurations that you can do it to take up like just specific slots. Like it could only be like 2 or 3 piece sets, that aren't hugely game breaking or something like that. That maybe you could make it worthwhile. Like, well, this class can give up, like these slots or what have you, for working with the set. Maybe this class only has 10 usable. Like I want to play a summoner necro, and the summoner necro only uses 10 slots of gear. So I can give up 3 slots to do whatever. And so maybe there is a set bonus that it's like that increases my run speed by 20%, and it's better than nothing. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just to briefly say, like, I think you touched on it in the beginning of where you were. It's 9. It's that, like, for instance, in Diablo 4, you know my checkered history with the Paragon system,
Well,
and my feelings towards it. But in Diablo 4, from what we've seen, from the blogs, from what they've described and what they've shown, like, I am actually looking forward to Paragon D4. I'm actually looking forward. Like, I've turned around 180 on the system because from when it was first introduced to where it is now, perceivably in Diablo 4, they gave it purpose. They said, no longer is Paragon going to be a mindless grind, an infinite grind, and you're only going to get main stat that already has diminishing turns built into it. The more you get, the less you get out of it per level. We're going to give it purpose. We're going to give it player agency. We're going to have nodes. We're going to have glyphs. We're going to let you spin those boards, spin a Rooney. So we're going to give this system purpose. So when you think about what they've done for Paragon in D4, and then you look at sets, it's actually kind of reassuring that sets aren't in at the beginning, because it gives me hope that they realized sets for a while haven't had purpose. Like, has anyone ever asked that question to a developer? Like, what's the purpose of sets? Like, to be a cool class, the cool way to play your class you couldn't play otherwise? Like, okay, but you can do that with legendaries. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's just a set's a different avenue to kind of do the same thing. So hopefully, through them holding back, hopefully is that they're trying to figure out what the purpose is in Diablo 4 for sets are going to be. That gives me hope.
I mean, one thing for sets that I can see in terms of purpose is guiding new players into a build, quote unquote, just showing them, hey, you found this one piece of gear and these others belong to it. This is something you can hunt for, even if you don't know anything about the game. If you went in blind, if you don't look up any guides, anything at all, you now have a goal, like something tangible that you want to achieve, and that gets you to come back to the game, right? Otherwise, if it's just random gear and you don't know what build you're going for because you've never bothered looking anything up, you've never bothered to theocraft the whole thing, then a set might be really useful as like a guiding line, even if it's not ideal, even if it's not endgame viable, but it is a first step.
Yeah, no, I mean that is a good point, and kind of like I think we're already kind of speculating and sitting on that. It's like maybe its place in the itemization would does fit well for that guidance, especially with how they've created the itemization system in Diablo 4 being choose your own adventure, take however many legendaries that you want, swap them all around the gear, trade all of your rares to find like the best stats and such. So and then a set is just kind of like there. I think I am really liking your idea about it. The more I think about it, with the tying it somehow into like the seasonal journey, just because it gives you, and it could be like you've unlocked this node. Well, pick your set piece. We had that in Diablo Immortal with Prodigy's Path, and you could go through and kind of like pick one of a set of sets. Now, the sets in Diablo Immortal, we should go through and say, are on like your secondary gear, that they were generic, that all classes had access to, but they would all kind of like, well, here is a set that buffs your basic attacks. Here's one that buffs your buffs. Here's another one that buffs pets. Like the sets in Diablo Immortal were all generic that anybody could go through and use, and you picked whichever one complemented your playstyle or your class the best. And with the Prodigy's Path is, as you gain those those initial Paragon levels, at every milestone you could pick a piece from one of the sets. So that way, by the time I think it was like your Paragon like 120 or something like that, you'd have a full 6-piece set, and you could go off and you'd have that. So you're set and good. Even though by then the first piece that you got is useless in terms of itemization and gear, but we'll talk about that another time. But it at least it was a nice like kind of like guide that here you go. It doesn't really affect your overall itemization, your skills, or your build, or anything like that. But it was just a nice little boost to be like, well, do you want to be a basic attack, or do you want to play with pets? It kind of like it gave you options that guided where you might want to start your gameplay.
Well, I think we did it. I think we nailed down sets. Developers, Rod, I know you listen, so take these notes, pencil it in. They need to be good. I think we all agreed on that. Sets should be good, but not great. Uh, do with that what you will. Okay, so we got to keep
It's always. Sorry, it's like one of those ones where it's really hard. It's like all the effort that the developers are going through and putting in. I'm sure these are conversations that they had, and they ended up dropping sets, completely, in favor of continuing on the itemization system, that they've teased at us over time, that we got a brief look at over in December and such. And so they came to the decision that we're gonna go with our legendary system as opposed to sets, and we'll figure out sets at some other point. So it's just it's like what can you do in that mindset to work with the decisions that they've already clearly made.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not to be a negative Nancy, but when Diablo 3 launched, sets did not have the dominance that they ended up with currently, right? So is it possible? I think the development of Diablo 4 is not going to push us to that direction. But they weren't prominent in D3 at the start. Um, Hopefully lessons learned kind of along the way. Okay. Set speculation over. Let's go big time. Let's go big. Let's call our shots, guys. We know the game is going to have another class, maybe two, maybe three, maybe four. Who knows? As long as we keep buying fancy, sparkly ponies, they're going to keep making classes. I will buy a sparkly pony, but it doesn't matter. So call your shot. What is going to be the new class that gets added? What is the next one? What does it got to be? Angst, what you got?
In my mind, the next one has to be something like Crusader, Paladin, Templar, whatever, anything in that direction. Heavily armored, uses a shield, probably wholly aspected in some way. This is like, I think, the one major archetype we are missing right now.
Like your logic, but it's actually going to be Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor, insanely popular. I've seen like 3 Reddit threads about it in the past couple days. People being like, "What? No Witch Doctor?" So clearly, it's going to be a Witch Doctor, right?
There's only like 2 people who are happy about with what you just said.
It's funny because I just over the weekend I did a lore episode with Anna
Mhm.
Cake, and she's one of those two people about wanting to go through and have the witch doctor. I mean, from a lore, I'm gonna say something first, and then I'm going to defeat my own point. From a lore perspective, the jungles just below Kyrgyzstan on the other side of the river, that's like the limit of the playable area that we've seen on the world maps is where the Umbaro people live. That's where the witch doctors come from and such. So if like the first expansion were to open up a new zone, it kind of like it makes sense that you just continue on the same landmass that you're at, as opposed to like going to an island on the other side of the world like Scovos for the Amazon, or going across the Badlands to like open up maybe like Demon Hunters where their base of operations are over there in the not the Badlands, the Dreadlands, across kind of like the Alaskan Russian like land bridge in the northern area that connects the Badlands to the Dreadlands type thing. There's also Zanzai that's up there with the Wizards. That would also be like a little quick hop for all of the kind of like the lore centric areas that you could go and the classes associated with those places. And then now to disprove my own self is that narrative is made to fit game design, not game design made to fit narrative. So they're they're going to make decisions on what the next class is, regardless of what they're gonna go through and do, and they'll find a way to make it work. They could open up like the jungles, or they could go into the Dreadlands and introduce a Crusader or Paladin or something, and like, well, the witch doctors and the demon hunters will come later. You'll meet some in the game, kind of like Natalia in Kurast and such, but we won't play them just yet. But I will say that probably the biggest thing that people are asking for is like that holy class, and yeah, I guess it's going to be interesting to see what direction that they go to. The Crusader would make the most lore sense because they're like active, in that area. The Paladins that we know from Diablo 2 are from Westmarch, which isn't, very, very far away from where the events of Diablo 4 are going through and taking place. And also, we don't know, like, from what little that we were able to play the game in Act 1, it's the Church of Light, and so not the Zakarum that we're playing with, and the Paladins were specifically, part of the Zakarum faith, which seems to have not had like any presence at all in that little area that we got to see. So we don't know what that might be, but a Crusader would make sense, as long as they don't do something stupid like add like an angel as a class, that would like break all of the lore and such. I think that'd be fine.
So what you're saying is it's going to be an angel.
Oh, that'd be so dumb. That'd be so
I,
dumb.
I, yeah. Even Nephilim aside, right? Diablo's always
Yeah.
been humans, or you know uh, the babies of demons and angels fighting more
Yeah.
demons. Like you don't play as an
the
angel.
uh the the ancients, the firstborn, as it were, because what
Yes.
was it, as we talked about in the last podcast, the new lore book, which I mean, it was the Tales of the Rohirrim Library, was really good, but yeah, they uh they went out of their way to not use the word Nephilim.
Which will be interesting because as we talk about speculation, I'm not as much of a lore guy as you, Neinball, but I am really interested in the story. I want to see what happens because, like, this is a story we've all been watching be told for 20 plus years now. It's exciting to see where it's going to go and what they
It's just
choose to do.
it's actually just a few more years before it's 30 plus years.
Jesus.
Yeah.
You really have to do this.
I did in fact have to do this.
Mhm. All
Yeah,
right.
well, our
So,
our old age aside, Dread, what's the new class going to be? And again, why is it Witch Doctor?
sorry, Anna. No. Um, all right. Here, I will do something. I'll go to Crazy Land while not going to Crazy Land. I agree. Like my other two over cohorts over here, that it will be a holy based class. But even with what they told us lore wise, like Heaven's Gates have been closed to Sanctuary. Whatever happens in the campaign is gonna happen. Who knows what Heaven's situation is gonna be in regards to Sanctuary at that point. I'm like, and they really are sticking to this like dark, gritty, like Sanctuary just hates you as a player. Like at all avenues, Sanctuary just does not like you anymore. Like Diablo 3 was cutesy. Diablo 4 is like we'll see you in hell eventually. You'll get there. So it would be interesting if they kind of took what we think of a paladin class, but called it a heretic. Like think of a fallen paladin trying to earn their way back up. And like different, like for everything they do, it's like, yeah, they use holy, but there's like a weird cost associated with it, like resource wise. Like there's more of a pro con, like there's a give and take. And either it can be within the skills or it could be within the resource system. There could be a dual, it could be like a demon hunter situation where it's like you have a resource and then you have like and then you have and like hatred is the main resource. Discipline is like the stuff used for like mobility and all that stuff. So for the heretic class, their main resource could be like to do their stuff, like to do their main skills, but the secondary resource, which could be like favor, has to be built up. Like they have to constantly earn their favor back up with heaven, and then they can expel it to heal themselves or heal others or do something for themselves. But it's not innate to them. They don't always have it because they're a heretic. They were casted out by, the Cathedral of Light, whether it was just or not. And their goal, their mission as a class, as a character, is to get back in the good graces, literally, to where that's not their cost. That's like the lore, that's like the scope. But as like a practical class, that would be like the interplay for the class. So there you go. There's my shoot for the moon weird idea for a class.
So kind of like an Oathbreaker paladin, right?
Oathbreaker goes over my
I
head, but I will say shut.
how about how about Shadowbane Inquisitor? How about did you play third edition?
Not in a long time.
Oh, okay,
3.5.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 3.5. Yeah.
is that what?
Shadowbane. No?
Like
Yeah.
3.5 is just so there's so many different layers. Um,
But you don't remember the one out of like 3,000 different prestige classes that Wizards of the Coast put out
yeah,
every
no,
like 10 years?
not at all. I've
Uh,
just started to dabble a little bit into Pathfinder. I'm getting all that nostalgia of like, oh man, this is got way more depth. Um,
yeah.
but that'll work. All right, so everybody's going holy. Uh, I just think we need another pet class, and
Um,
I would love to be pleasant. Like if we're talking speculation, I would love to see eh, two classes. I would love to see two classes come. Um, not just the holy aspect, but something else too. I think it's always fun when you have just a few more options. When the new class comes out, everybody does gravitate towards it. When you have to choose, like that was the fun choice
mhm.
about Lord of Destruction is, when that came out, Assassin looks really cool, Druid looks the best, but the Assassin's got some kicks and all that kind of stuff. And when I'm done shaping into all these wild shapes and tossing boulders at stuff, I'm
And
gonna
then
I'm gonna do some
realizing that I
kicking.
can't kill anything.
Yeah. But man, do I look good not doing it. So the but that was a fun choice. That was fun to like not only go from, five classes to six, but from five to seven. That
Yeah.
I would love to see that. I would love to just see like a little bit more variety when that happens. I think that'd be fun. And then you can do a holy class and a witch doctor. Everybody wins. Um, I'm not pushing for the witch doctor. I like I played Witch Doctor in D3 because the Necromancer wasn't available and Druid wasn't an option. So if it doesn't come back, it doesn't come back. I'm okay with that. Any other class speculation?
No, I mean it's also one of those ones where it's like I would kind of be interested in Dred's idea because that was one of the things I was saying before we knew that the Necromancer, was going to be in the game. That I was torn between two things for what the fifth class would be, either it being a Necromancer or it being something completely new. Because even though like you can count the Rogue as like a completely new class, because even though the Rogue existed in Diablo 1, like that doesn't count. There wasn't enough like real identity in the particular classes in Diablo 1 to like consider like what you would later evolve into like Diablo 2, Diablo 3 and such. So the rogue is kind of new even though it already existed, but just seeing something brand new. It's like the Diablo 4 dev team show us what you got. What do you think a holy class should be? Type thing. As long as it's not something stupid like an angel. It's just what can they come up with? What can they do? Because that's like the one art. Because we think of it less of as a crusader, but more as like that arch type of like the sword and board holy class, like the big tanky character type thing of the just filling that niche.
So as we continue with speculation, right? We know we're going to have seasons. Um, and we're seeing Diablo 3 take on a major change in its not last season, but its most current iteration of the season. Um, and pre-show, Dred and I were discussing the first season that Diablo 4 has kind of needs to nail it, right? So, what is the first season? If we're going to speculate, what is the first season? What is the thing that is going to keep people coming back to Diablo 4 time and time again? Um, we already know a lot of the end game systems, right? We know about the PvP, we know about the dailies, we know about dungeons, we know about world bosses. What do you think it's going to be that's going to keep people coming back off of that first season? What would the highlight be? Because we know we're not going to start with them. We're going to just get a chance to play. But then they're going to hit the ground with what will be the first of many. How do you nail it? What's it got to be?
Um, I think like I can't say like what it is because that's completely up to them, like what they want to do. And what they want to do, they're gonna center like thematically around content that will be for the theme, whatever it is. Um, and that's kind of like where we can start and stop on that point. But as far as like what I want out of a season, like to me, and this is like how I was describing it pre-show, like a season has to be like a demon with its hand clawing into almost every aspect of the game. Like, they showed us like, they gave us a preview what Paragon boards look like. Give us a seasonal themed Paragon board with seasonal glyphs. So every season we have that to look forward to. So Paragon doesn't get stale and Paragon gets shaken up by that nature. You don't have to go any more than that, but that does enough. You don't have to introduce seasonal specific items, but if you want to introduce ways of altering items, you can have season specific augmentation items like Ramalani's gifts, stuff like that. That could be seasonal themed. So they're a lot more manageable and a lot easier for the average player to understand what exactly they're going to do because it's self-contained. It's easy. Like this item says it does this. Easy. This item says it does that. Easy. Also, when you have those items, you can make some really, really high-powered and can be in like nightmare dungeons, and some of them can be low powered and can be dropped in like local events or stuff like Helltide and all that other kind of stuff that they've mentioned in their end game preview up to that test. Um, Along with the additional content, hopefully additional things to do at endgame. It doesn't have to be the hardest thing that we can do, but it has to be something. And I think, and I hope that's what they're going for, that they're taking a PoE like approach where they're going to do a lot of little things that can all have a cumulative effect and does shake up the meta, but it's not like it's pinnacle content, and it's all pinnacle content. And so the vast majority of players never really get to experience it. It's like raiding back in vanilla days of World of Warcraft. Yeah, like 1% of players attempted, let alone ever cleared those raids. So it's really content for like nobody. It was a ghost town. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I can't really go any further because that's the dev's job. I'm not paid for that.
Yeah. I like obviously like the update that we have with the alternate rights coming in 2.7.5 is obviously like huge. But prior to that, like I look back and see like what are some of the most like memorable or impactful seasons, and it's the sanctified items that we've got right now, the ethereal items that we had previously, or even just the fourth Kanai's cube slot. It's just like some of those things were some of like the funnest, most impactful seasons that we had because we got to effectively like just equip an extra piece of gear, and just having that one extra legendary piece had worlds of difference that changed up gameplay, made things that weren't viable suddenly became viable. You'll never be able to play a Poison Nova Necromancer ever again, as an actual Poison Nova, not Blood Nova on the new Tragol set. But it is thinking about that. I mean, but that type of thing is kind of, I guess, relatively simple. I don't know what it would be on like the developer side, but even for the first season, could just be like, oh yeah, our first seasonal theme is you can equip 2 legendary properties on a weapon or an amulet, that has like the double proc effect. It's just like, yeah, that's the seasonal theme, and that is cool. That's fun, more or less. It now makes me want to go through and hunt down like even more like legendary properties because I can get that additional one in there. I think that one would be simple, just kind of like going back and basing that off of Diablo 3 experiences, but just as kind of like Dread is Dread's line of thinking, but something that SVR had told me years ago that I take to heart is that players are always great at identifying problems, but are rarely ever good at creating solutions. So it's just like one of those ones. It's like, yeah, we're bored. We want something to do, but then we have terrible ideas as to what would actually be fun, and that's where the developers come in.
Yeah,
Speaking of terrible
in
ideas,
education, we always call it admiring the problem. We're really good at admiring a problem. We can talk about it, we can point at it, and we can really build it up. But actually solving it, I got no idea. But man, it is a really big problem, right? Um, yeah, I like that. And
um,
Angst, I was interrupting you.
yeah, I was just gonna go off on speaking of terrible ideas, but I just maybe I want to devil's advocate or be contrarian before that. Does the first season really need to be special? Does it need to have a gimmick? Because everybody is gonna play it anyway, right? Like
Yeah.
assuming it doesn't start too long after the game's release, everybody is gonna be on season 1 anyway. Isn't it season 2 that needs to have something special to bring people back? Okay, anyway, just throwing that one out there,
That's fair.
and not allowing you to answer because I'm just going to keep going. Now to the terrible idea, um, which probably mechanically would be an absolute nightmare to implement. But what if we had some sort of a build a demon thing going on? Let's say, I don't know, lore-wise, there is some powerful demon that's been slain. Its soul is still somewhere in the void, in the nether, in the wherever they go to, but it is about to return for whatever reason. We know this. Um, And now our plan is to create a host body for that thing, which is weaker than the body it would normally come back in, so that we can fight it again. Um, but of course, it still needs to be strong enough to even host that demon to begin with. So that we're basically building up our own boss fight. Maybe there's like other monster parts to collect to then build that thing from, or random materials or whatever, with which we could like influence what rewards we get from slaying the thing and the abilities that it itself has. Like this is just a wild mechanic thrown out there that's probably way too much for a season. That might be more of a like major patch and then mainstay kind of thing. I don't know. But yeah, just random wild idea.
So
Wait, I'm gonna cut you off for a second. I'm gonna make this idea legitimate by saying one phrase. The seasonal theme you just described is build an Uber.
Huh.
Basically,
So this is where I get to drop and say PoE did it. So the Metamorph League,
Mhm.
um, like I want to say 2 years ago, similar premise. You collect piece parts and then you interact with this guy in your map and you can put them together. But if you did it on a bigger scale, I think it would be cooler because this was just happening all the time. But it is possible, right? And that does bring up a different challenge though too in looking ahead towards different seasons. They may have to compete a little bit with Path of Exile. Now there is some nicety to like saying like, okay, this is what they've done. How do we take that and make it work? Because it's not like Path of Exile has leagues that are kind of repeats. They reskin a few things. You're going to have a league where you interact with one thing and you get swarmed by hordes of monsters, right? That has been a league several times over. That's Breach, that's Abyss. Um, that's Breach 2.0. Uh, like it comes back. But take those good ideas and roll with them. Yeah, absolutely. So good news, Angst. It's very doable. And it was one of my favorite leagues. So I'd be all for it.
for the record, I have not played a lot of PoE and I did not know that.
Well, you know, you can't come on here if you don't know every video game ever. Like that's you just
Ever.
you
Yeah.
gotta bring that knowledge with you. Um,
All right,
that's
sorry, logging off. I have some video games to play, I think.
I don't have
Just
time
a
to
few.
talk.
Just
Yeah, well,
Uh,
there's like 4 or 5 missing in my repertoire.
well, and the thing about a Path of Exile League too is they happen so frequently. It's easy to miss them or to like take leagues off. Like I skipped the past 9 months worth of leagues, and I'm just playing catch up. Like, oh yeah, this is cool. Um, so you're
is
gonna
that
miss it.
also kind of like with the way that PoE does their leagues is like how much of that also gets added into like the core game that comes back, you know, either and if, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it comes back like the very next league. Sometimes it might take a league or two and then it gets added back in and just becomes baseline at that point and such, but they'll take popular things and fold it into the mix, based on player feedback and such.
Yeah,
You mean
and I think that
Echoing
is
Nightmare?
that's one of my favorite things about it is if there's a league mechanic, as you alluded to before, Nineball, how like a poison necro is never going to be a thing that you can do. Well, turns out there were a lot of people that really like that. So let's fold that into the game and let's make that a real possibility so that you can always choose that. That's fun, right? Let's take these ideas that worked, make them core mechanics of the game. And let's take the ideas that didn't and let's never talk about them ever again.
Yeah.
Like that's a league we don't talk about. I like Diablo maybe playing taking a few risks, I guess. Later seasons, right? Do those in like season 10 where you like the core mechanic for the new league for Path of Exile on, like league they're in the 30s at this point. I don't even know what number it is it's a roguelike in the middle of the game. Diablo 4 launches a mini roguelike that you're playing on season 3. No, don't do that. Like let's do something that's more core to an ARPG. But in season 36, of a game that's been out for a decade now. Yeah, those are great risks. It keeps it fun and keeps things moving. And if it's really really fun, then it becomes a core part of the game. I think that's awesome. But let's not let's not jump to that on season 2 or anything like that. We
I
don't need
mean,
to go that
isn't a
far.
roguelike just hardcore?
Uh yeah, but I understand that most people don't want to play that. If everybody was forced to play hardcore from the start, I don't think
Yeah, I know.
it wouldn't be as successful. Um,
No.
I would love it, but not everybody wants to spend hundreds of hours and lose them on one character.
Yeah, just tad.
You know, it's okay. It's okay. Um, okay. So, any other ideas for leagues seasons before we move on to more wild speculation?
Um, I guess to give I an angel point to a devil's advocate point. um, I wouldn't say that Diablo 4's first season has to smash it out of the like. It doesn't have to be a grand slam. Um, and I don't know, and I won't go into describing what it has to be, but I think it has to be a demonstrate the development team's commitment, and most of all, it demonstrates their intent. Like if their intent is to have good, impactful seasons that you are going to play more than the first 2 weeks. Um, because a lot of the Diablo 3, because Diablo 3, a lot of the core audience was Diablo 2 coming from Diablo 2, Diablo 3. And we saw how that was going to play out. We have lived long enough that we're going to be part of another Diablo shift where it's going to be mainly Diablo 3 people going to Diablo 4. And Diablo 3 community is a heck of a lot different than Diablo 2. They're used to certain quality of life. They're used to not having certain quality of life. They're used to a game being a certain way. They're used to a game not being a certain way. And with that comes seasons. So their barometer of seasons in D3 is pretty good right now with what D3 seasons are. So if D4 seasons, so a D4 season doesn't have to be a smash hit, but it has to be at least more than what D3 is doing. Otherwise, it's seen as a mismatch. And it seemed like you had all this time to do this, even though we know development is hell on the
Yeah.
best of days. But I think that's what it is. Like they have to like make a statement. Like this is what our intentions are. What that is up to the developers. But there's a certain barometer they have to meet. And the barometer really is the last couple of Diablo 3 seasons. That's the real benchmark at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, every season, Diablo 4 will be competing against something else, right? And it's not just Path of Exile. Like every season, every league, you're competing against a new game that came out, right? So it needs to be enough to drive people back, and you need enough of a core audience to want to keep coming back. And that's why I think I would agree with you, Dred, that I think that first season does need to be enough to be like, yeah, that was really fun. I want to come back for whatever they're going to come up with next. And now I'm going to go play Final Fantasy 16, right? And
Mm.
granted, that's coming out in shortly after. I'm not going to play that. I want to play it,
I, I
but I
want,
need,
yeah,
uh,
I'm in the
I,
same boat. I want to play that game, but it's not happening.
maybe, when season 3 is coming around, I'm just like, okay, all right. I don't even, maybe let's be honest, season 5. And then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go play Final Fantasy 16 this round because this season's just not for me. But
I'll just wait for it to go on sale.
I'll come back to it eventually. yeah, I don't anticipate needing much else. But it does have to compete with those people who are not hosting a Diablo podcast and getting up at 4:30 in the morning to be on a Diablo podcast. It has to convince those people to come back to it, right? And that needs just a little bit more. Okay, so Neinball's bedtime is closely approaching. We need one last point of speculation, and I'm going to pitch it to you guys. I'm not going to toss anything out there. What do you want? What's our last speculation? What's our last thing to talk about here?
So one that I've got. So let's go away from game mechanics to lore and story. Will we see Tyrael get his wings back?
Are you talking about Tyrael's wings?
I'm talking about Tyrael's wings.
Tyrael's wings. Ugh. Let's just
Is
figure it
Tyrael even alive to get his wings
out.
back?
That is the question, of course, isn't it? What happened? What happened to our favorite angel? And Arius is taking all of the limelight there. What's going on? What's happening with Tyrael? What's he up to?
Well, the speculation, right, isn't that Tyrael has died. We've seen images of a grave. We know that there's this book of Loreth that's supposed to be coming out. Um, well, yeah, there is an interesting aspect there of Tyrael chose to become human, right? So what happens when he dies? Does he go back to being an angel? Is
Uh,
he just
from
dead?
from from the lore perspective, Tyrael resurrecting in the first place at the beginning of Diablo 3 had never occurred previously. Angels, their essence usually goes back to the Crystal Arch and then is reborn as a similar but different being. Might have some of Tyrael's, like mannerisms or something, but it wouldn't be Tyrael.
Nineball, from the lore perspective, was there ever an explanation given for that?
No, it happened and it was a miracle, and that's pretty much where they left it. And of course, hey, mysteries make good stories, so yeah, it was never fully explained how it came about. Tyrael himself didn't even understand it or know why. He was just brought back, and it was a great period of like celebration, like this miracle had occurred, never occurred before. And then he did the ultimate blasphemy and ripped off his beautiful wings and became mortal.
Could
Have
it be that not
any
even? I'm sorry. Could it be that not even death could judge Tyrael?
Well,
no, what I was gonna ask, have any of the council ever died before though? Because I
no.
mean we've
That was actually one of the things I had the
no?
I had the opportunity to talk with this about Anna on Saturday. That it's like Malthael is in a race with Mephisto as being the oldest being in all of existence. Malthael was the very first angel to ever come into being, and because what we know of angels, it's always been said, angels don't resurrect. Tyrael coming back to life was a miracle, had never been seen before, and from what we understand, those are the five original members of the Angiris Council. So basically, since near the beginning of time, those five beings have always been there. And then now Tyrael became mortal, Malthael died, council's in disarray, and yeah, it's definitely what you could probably put as political upheaval in heaven.
Well, I mean, Malthael is then going to return in some capacity, whether as himself or, as you said, like just some other angel with some aspects of him.
Yeah.
Might be another like far future conflict brewing there, but
Yep.
yeah, we'll see.
So Tyrael and his wings could come back. Tyrael's wings could come
Yep.
back. And I think
Tyrael's wings could come back.
That's an emote, right?
yeah, amongst other things. I think that would be great. I think we've lost so many things across the fandom. We don't need to lose Tyrael's wings. Rush is just
Correct.
going to be so pissed. Like we just can't keep saying it this whole time, but yet
I,
it
w-
still
I
fits the
wasn't
context.
I wasn't really paying attention to the Discord. I think he was saying something where he was actually encouraging me to say Tyrael's wings as much as I possibly could
Yeah, that's
in
how I
future
read it.
episodes. Yeah.
I feel like he already put in all the work for the graphics that if you don't do it, it's honestly kind of insulting. Um, but I think story speculation is kind of fun outside of Tyrael. We know Lilith, we've got Anarius. We saw that amazing trailer, which does look like they are in hell, right? So I'm gonna put this out there. My speculation, I don't think we see Diablo until an expansion or until a season. I, and no, I'm going to say expansion. We're going pure speculation, right? I don't think
Yeah.
we get a Diablo or one of the prime evils until then. I think they've put so much time into Lilith and Inarius that's where our starting point is. Um,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, and we've talked about that before, but that feels okay with me. I'd be content to catch these prime evils later on. Um, I understand it is a Diablo game, but I'm not upset
It,
if that's the
I
case.
mean, just narratively speaking, it would take all the focus away from Lilith and everything that they're building up about it. It doesn't make sense to introduce anybody else into the story like Diablo or something that's going to come out and be like, oh, it's the real threat, type thing. But yeah, definitely something much
Finally,
further down the
with a
line.
wheelchair.
Yeah, just give Lilith her time.
And
Yeah,
then,
it's a Lilith and Anarius rom-com, and we're the character caught in the middle.
as long as they're not interjecting like Asmodan in Act 3 constantly, I think we'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine. Okay, so Neinball, I think we almost did it. We're gonna get him to bed on time. Last random speculation before we close out here. Angst, what's a random speculation you got?
Um, God, in the same vein that you mentioned Diablo not coming back for a long time, I don't think we're going to see Tristram for quite a while. I mean, it's been in every like mainline Diablo game so far, but I'm really hoping we don't get to see it in base D4. I am really looking forward to returning eventually, but I just
Mhm.
hope it's going to be in some capacity that isn't just, oh, here's another portal to Tristram, go have a look, and now portal back, right? Because that's just not it. Like, give it some time, give us the like landmass around it as an expansion content, and then let us actually go there as part of the world, like well down the line.
That in and of itself sounds like an expansion too. Return to Tristram,
Yeah.
right? Like I'd buy that. But again, here we are on a podcast talking about Diablo. Of course, that's not a selling point for anybody. I'm wearing a frickin' robe. Um, like, of course he's gonna buy it, but I would buy it. Dread, what you got for random speculation?
I don't know. I don't know. I've just been trying to keep myself so grounded for once. That's like going a random speculation spree. Um, that there's definitely more. Okay, this seems like such a cop out, but there's definitely more coming to the game than what we've tested. It's just the old adage, give it time. Like, I guess I have enough faith in what the team has done that this is it for release, but it's not it for, all the content as far as especially end game systems.
Seems safe. All right, Neinball. Close it out. Random speculation.
I already gave mine.
Do more.
More? I don't know. They'll bring runes and rune words back. I don't know.
There it is. All right. We've talked a lot. We have figured out so many things. And now, we get to sit and wait and see if any of it actually comes to fruition. So let's close it out as we always do with a moo, moo, moo.
Moo, 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 moo.
Moo, moo, moo.